Hello everyone. Today's game is between Evgeny Sveshnikov, rated 2530 at the time with the white pieces, and Ivan Farago, rated 2520 with the black pieces. This game took place Hastings, 1984. What's this video about? Well, it's about the French advanced variation. So here's your typical position in the French advanced, and this is going to be a brief instructional of the plans for each side. I was doing some planning videos a few weeks ago, and I want to get back to it. So we're going to start with this French advanced structure. What's the basic plan for white? First of all, note the direction the pawns are pointing in. This is a general guideline that you can use. And whatever direction the pawns are pointing in, that usually dictates what side of the board that you are going to be launching your campaign on. In this case, for white, it's going to be the king side as he has more space there. Okay, so the basic plan is attack on the king side, right? You're going to be using your advantage in space here, all right, and also your lead in development. All right. What's good about the space advantage? Well, you can see here with this pawn on e5, it cramps the development of your opponent, right? For instance, the bishop can't come here on d6, knight can't come here on f6. He has to do something about that eventually. So it makes development difficult and tedious for your opponent, and many times you can use the extra time that your opponent uses, okay, to develop his pieces to gain a lead in development. All right. What else is good about a space advantage? Well, many times you can force a transition into a favorable endgame for yourself. All right. What's another plan for white here is to release the tension in the center. All right. Sometimes this takes place by d takes c5, and sometimes by e6. Okay, now when you do release the tension of these squares, you're going to follow that up with a blockade on the squares. So usually you might have a knight here, or a knight here, or a bishop there, some type of piece blockading those squares. So notice that even though the tension is being released, you're never relinquishing control of those squares. So if you get rid of the pawns there, you want to replace those pawns with pieces. Another very important strategy here, one of the most important strategies, is the trading off of these dark squared bishops for white. All right, notice again that this pawn chain pointing toward the king side, right? All the pawns here from b2 to e5 are all sitting on dark squares, all right, which makes this bishop a little bit uncomfortable here. Conversely, we see black's pawn chain, right? And these pawns are all on the light squares. This makes this his quote-unquote good bishop, where this bishop blocked behind the pawn, the light square pawns, is a bad bishop. So strategically, white wants to trade off the dark squared bishops. All right. Once he does that, then he can exploit the weakened dark squares. All right. Another strategic element is white often will play on both wings. One feature of locked pawn positions and block structures is that once the center is locked up, play often migrates to both sides of the board. So you will see players playing on the king side and the queen side. All right. Another idea is if black pushes c4, which you will see a lot, white definitely will plan most times to undermine this. Just make the move here on board. White will try to undermine this with moves like b3. Okay, and sorry about that. With b3, and then let's say after b takes c4, then the move c4 at some point. Okay. Now moving to the other side of the board, let's just flip the board real quick. Now we're going to look at black's plan, right? We can't just give white all the fun. So what does black want to do? Well, black, as you can see with this c pawn here, he wants to put maximum pressure on the d4 pawn. All right. What else does he want to do? Well, he wants to exchange this bad bishop, just like white wants to exchange his dark square bishop. Black wants to exchange his light square bishop, which is bad. How does he do that? Many times he'll go to d7 and b5. Okay, and sometimes he'll play moves like b6, for example, and exchange it via a6. What else? Again, this is very powerful for white if he can keep it intact, this pawn structure. So he undermines the pawn structure with moves like f7 to f6. Right? What's another plan by black? He attacks on the queen side. Remember, he has more space on this side. Remember, black's pawns are pointing toward the queen side. So that dictates his general strategy. So he wants to play b5, a5, b4. Okay? And of course, when the c file opens up, he'll be playing on the c file with his rooks, etc. Right? What else does black want to do? Well, he's going to have counterplay on the king side, of course. Sometimes he'll play g7 and g5, okay? And sometimes he'll have pressure on the f file, especially after this exchange takes place. But that's a plan that you don't see, too often. Okay, so those are a general. Now I'll flip the board back. Those are that is a general skeleton of plans for both sides. Okay, if you look at a bunch of games in this variation, you will see one of those plans, or sometimes a combination of those said plans for both sides coming back and forth. And let this video be a good reference for you if you're planning on playing the French is white. French defense advanced variation is white. And if you're defending against the advanced variation as black, this video will help you also, as I've listed the plans for both sides. And of course, with nuances, right? You can't just take everything, as the ground in stone, as as the ten written in stone as the Ten Commandments. Okay, that you have to be flexible, but take it as a general guideline. All right. So with that said, let's get into our game. Reason why I chose this particular game is because Evgeny Sveshnikov is one of the players, one of the Russian players that really put a lot of time into forging the French advanced variation for white into a modern system that we know it today. Okay, and he's written a lot on it, and it's a good example, a good player to follow in this game. So we're gonna look right now. So here we go. Again, Sveshnikov with the white pieces, Farago with the black pieces. So the game started off, of course, in our typical French variation. Sorry about that. So e4, e6, d4, d5, e5, c5, and there we go. We have the advance, the attack on the d4 pawn, and c3. Neutralizing that attack, knight c6. Again, notice the plans. Attack on the d4 pawn continues, defense, and now knight ge7. Okay, notice the knight cannot come out here because of the restriction of the e5 pawn. Now knight a3. And again, this knight is coming here again to attack the d4 pawn. Sometimes the knight will come here and then the attack will be against the e5 pawn. This knight is kind of mirroring this knight. So when the f5 pawn is attacked, when f5 is occupied by the square and the d4 pawn is attacked, this knight can jump back and offer more protection to the d4 pawn. C takes d4, c takes d4. And now knight f5, and now knight c2. Okay, bishop e7, and now bishop d3. Okay. Castle. Okay, So now here we can again we can go back to some of the aforementioned plans. Okay, so here we see white has his space advantage on the king side. All right, but right now he doesn't have a lead in development. All right, um, so we see in the next couple of moves, uh, white trying to make plans, uh, make more progress on the king side. So he's going to use this plan to further his position. So after g4, and of course, let me just mention, this move. Of course, if knight h6, then you can just play bishop takes h6. So knight h4 is more logical and more common here. Knight takes, bishop takes, and now Sveshnikov plays g5. All right, and this is a common situation you'll see here where white is willing to sacrifice material uh, here in order to gain the initiative against the king. All right, if he captures the g pawn, of course, this allows the g file to be opened up after, say, rook g1. So bishop takes g5, queen h5, threatening mate, of course, and winning the bishop. This forces this concession here, and now h6 is played. Rook g1. Of course, it's understandable why white doesn't really want to go into this funky ending here. I mean, after all, he could go into the ending, but black doesn't have too much to worry about as the attack has lost a great amount of steam. So he keeps developing. Rook to g1, bishop takes c1, and now the other rook comes in. f5 is played. Good move here. I mean, if he played a move like king h8, and king e2 is kind of nasty because then now you have ideas of the rook taking here on g7, just sacrificing itself, followed by a quick attack against the king. So f5 is a natural move, right? Blunting the force of the bishop here. Queen takes h6. The rook comes up to protect. And now king e2, of course, connecting the rooks. Queen b6. So you see black again playing on quote unquote his side of the board. Okay, this is where black is strong, so he tries to play over here, attacking this pawn and this pawn on d4. This forces Sveshnikov to come back to defend the d pawn. And now bishop d7. Queen takes b2 is, again, using the engine is probably possible, but very dangerous. So I'm not sure if rook b1 is queen takes a2. Yeah, this looks like trouble. Rook a1, queen b2, and then just bring the other rook over. Queen c3. I'm trying to chase the queen down. Rook a3. Okay, the queen is trapped, but he has this move. Knight takes. And then just simply queen takes d4. Yeah, so white is just better at this point. So I don't think queen takes b2 is any good there after rook. yeah, maybe even stronger is moving the king over, because if you move the king over now, then this prevents this move queen c3. So let's say now after queen a2, rook a1, and now you see the difference here. There's no queen c3, and now the queen is definitely trapped. So queen takes b2 doesn't look right, doesn't smell right at all. So, and of course, Farago didn't think so either, and he just continued to develop. I'm always suspicious of queen takes b2. You see that opportunity, uh, it's usually bad news many times. So bishop d7 was played, rook g5, common sense move, and now he does play queen takes b2. So he gives in the temptation, and king d2, knight e7, and now Sveshnikov played rook h5 here. I don't see nothing wrong with rook cg1 here, but rook h5 is good too. This threatens old-fashioned mate. So knight g6 is forced, hitting the queen and preventing the mate. Queen g3 now attacking the knight. Knight goes back, and now queen h3, and now rook e7 is played to provide an escape path. Rook h8, king to f7. Now the other rook joins the fight. Rook g1, bishop a4. Black is still trying to play on his side of the board. Queen h5. Rook g7 is good too. Rook takes g7. Queen h5 and g6. And now simply rook takes g6. And here black resigned. Because after, you might be able to see this, but after knight takes, then just simply queen h7 is checkmate there. Okay, so what we learned in that game, besides the basic plans of white and black, we also learned that that knight on f5 can be placed a little precariously, and sometimes white can exploit the position of that knight on f5 in order to launch an attack on the king side of the board. That was a pretty straightforward game, and I like it because it's easy to show what both sides are trying to do. Even though black lost, you can see his general play on the king side. Excuse me, on the queen side, and you can see white's attack on the king side. Of course, you can look at better games, and then you'll see, like, sometimes black's plan will win the battle for the day, and sometimes it'll be white. So here you saw white play a model game in this line, and you know, yeah, that's pretty much it. And please support and donate to my channel. Links are posted below for videos or DVDs rather, and books related to this opening, which today is the French Defense Advanced Variation.